The universe is controlled by strange and infinitely powerful forces. One of the greatest human endeavors is to identify and understand those forces, how they interact with each other, how they interact with us. This quest is essential because we are not merely observers of the universe, we are part of it. This is the Large Hadron Collider. Buried 100 meters beneath the border of France and Switzerland, the Large Hadron Collider is a 17-mile-long tunnel built to create near-light-speed collisions of subatomic particles. It is the world's largest machine, but it studies the smallest objects in the universe. Its most amazing discovery to date was the Higgs boson. The Higgs boson gives mass and gravity to particles, allowing them to come together and interact with each other, forming atoms, the building blocks of all things. Without the Higgs boson, without mass and gravity, there would be no stars, no planets, and yes, no lawyers. Human relations and actions are controlled by strange and powerful forces. One of the highest human endeavors is to identify and understand those human forces, how they interact with each other, how they interact with other people, how they interact with us. Aristotle was one of the first to identify the three most powerful forces in human nature. The three are logos, logic, pathos, emotion, and ethos. Ethos is a combination of many different forces working together. Those three control just about everything we think or do with other people. Of the three, Aristotle said that ethos was the most important. So, what is ethos? Why do we want it? What does it do for us? People with ethos have credibility. They're respected by their peers. They have both confidence and humility. A boson is a force-carrying particle in nature. Ethos is a force-carrying power in people and human relations. It's the Higgs boson of successful lawyers. Ethos allows a person to develop substance, to possess human gravity, and to productively interact with other people and institutions. It's the basis of wise decisions, professionalism, persuasion, respect, and ultimately, happiness. As we break ethos down, the first thing we come to is credibility. The nucleus of ethos is credibility. It's the quality or power of inspiring belief. Successful people place great emphasis on credibility. It's been very valuable and important to them. As you can see from the screen, Mike Wallace thought credibility was really important in journalism. But what is credibility? Like the physicists with the Higgs boson, we must break it down into its parts. The first part we come to in the credibility atom is the honesty particle. Credibility can never exist without honesty. Honesty and dishonesty cannot coexist. The laws of human physics dictate that we will acquire a reputation for one or the other, and that reputation will be a force-carrying boson for better or for worse. The ABA standards and the rules of professional conduct for virtually every state have at their very core a rule regarding honesty. It is professional misconduct for a lawyer to engage in dishonesty, fraud, deceit, or misrepresentation. This is the nucleus of the rules of professional conduct in every state and in the ABA standards. This quote is from a published opinion in which the court suspended an attorney for deceitfully attempting to negotiate additional fees from an adverse party. The attorney had already received $91,000 under a global settlement for representing her client, but that wasn't enough. She negotiated for more with the other side, and she hid the negotiations for additional fees from her own client, making her offer contingent on non-disclosure to her client. In suspending her, the hearing board made these observations. As you can see from what the hearing board said, this was more than just a violation of the fee agreement. The most prevalent motivation for attorney dishonesty is money. Attorneys often have control of substantial amounts of money belonging to clients. The attorney discipline cases are replete with examples of attorneys failing to hold client funds in a proper trust account and converting those funds for their own personal use. This practice continues to thrive even though disbarment is the presumptive sanction for theft of client funds. Many attorneys internally justify the theft as a loan they will pay back. They usually can't or don't. And whether they return the money or not, in the world of attorney ethics, it was stolen at the time it was taken. Beware of the quest for money. It diverts us from the pursuit of more important things. Plato said, "All the gold which is under or upon the earth is not enough to give in exchange for virtue." Silas Marner was a weaver who lived in a small English village in the early 19th century. He was an outsider who had a sad past. His work and the accumulation of the money it provided became his obsession and his life. He hid his money beneath the floor of his cottage. It was kept in orderly piles in a compulsive sort of way. Every night he pulled it from its hiding place to count and admire. No love, no joy, except his money. The villagers knew Silas made a lot of money and spent little, and rumor had it that it was hidden somewhere in his cottage. One night when Silas was away, a thief found the money and stole it. Silas was crushed when he returned and found it gone. His loss brought some sympathy from the villagers, but he remained an outcast, and now a very depressed one. On New Year's Eve, on a snowy night, a woman is passing by the cottage with a small child on the way to a party. The woman had used some opium, and she was very intoxicated. She fell down and passed out in the snow. The little girl was very confused and frightened. She saw a light in the distance, and she followed it, and it turned out to be a candle burning in Silas's cottage. She went in through an open door. The little girl was exhausted, and she fell asleep on the rug. When Silas woke up, he saw something golden on the floor, something yellow, and he thought for a minute that his gold coins had come back to him, that he had his precious money again. He quickly saw that it was the little girl's golden hair. Silas wasn't a bad man. He was just caught up in money. And because he wasn't a bad man, he had great sympathy for the little girl. No one in the village claimed her or wanted to take care of her, so he decided to adopt her. With the help of a kind local woman in the village, he raised her as his own daughter. He named her Eppie, after his mother and sister. Through the years, he learned to treasure her far more than he had ever loved his gold. He gained back the respect of the villagers and found great happiness in the father-daughter relationship. The story has a great ending. As it turns out, the thief who stole the money fell into a stone pit behind the cottage when he was trying to get away. 16 years later, the water in the pit was drained for irrigation, and the skeleton of the thief and Silas's gold were both found. It was an exciting day. Everybody in the village was celebrating, and they gathered at the cottage to have a big party. Silas asked everyone to leave early so he could have time with Eppie. They sat alone by the candlelight. On the table near them lay the gold coins, the old, long-loved gold, arranged in the orderly piles as he used to pile it up and look at it, in the days when it was his only joy. He told Eppie how he used to count it every night, and how his soul was utterly desolate and empty until she was sent to him. Eppie thanked him for taking care of her, and he said, "Ah, my precious child, the blessing was mine. If you hadn't been sent to save me, I should have gone to my grave in misery. The money was taken away from me in time, and you see it's been kept now, kept until it was wanted for you." He sat for a few minutes looking at the money and said softly, "It takes no hold of me now. The money takes no hold of me." Eppie married a kind and well-respected young villager. Silas gave Eppie away at her wedding. And yes, they lived happily ever after. Diligence is part of the credibility atom. It exists independently, but it often interacts with the honesty particle. The second most prevalent motivation for lawyer dishonesty, second only to money, is to cover up a failure to do your job. Many attorney discipline cases involve lying to a client about the status of a case or claim which the attorney has failed to pursue. State rules of professional conduct and the ABA standards require a lawyer to act with reasonable diligence and promptness in representing a client. ABA Standard 4.42 provides that suspension is generally appropriate when a lawyer causes injury or even potential injury to a client by knowingly failing to perform services or engaging in a pattern of neglect. In one attorney discipline case, the attorney told the client's wife that he had filed pleadings he had failed to file. Told her he was waiting to hear from the court. He hadn't filed anything with the court. The client made efforts to contact the lawyer for almost 2 years without success. When they finally spoke to him, he lied and told them a hearing had been set, even giving them a false date and time. The clients actually went to court and found there was no hearing and no case. Aristotle was right. Here's what he said about this: the least deviation from the truth will be multiplied later. When you lie, when you're not diligent, when you put off doing your work, it snowballs. It gets worse and worse. In another case, a client paid an attorney $17,000 to handle her mother's estate. 6 months later, the client sent the attorney emails asking about the status. The attorney told the client the court had rejected his pleadings for technical reasons and blamed the court for the delay. In fact, the attorney never even filed anything with the court and lied to the client to cover up the lack of action. Of course, he'd already spent the $17,000 without providing any services. In some cases, in far too many cases, personal problems are the underlying cause of neglect of professional responsibility. In one case, the Colorado courts suspended an attorney with the following observations. The board is concerned about the stresses and problems on the respondent that were apparent in his behavior before and after his move and the winding up of his law practice. It is ordered that as a condition of reinstatement, respondent demonstrate that he's had appropriate mental health counseling or substance abuse evaluation and counseling or other necessary professional help designed to diagnose the causes of his problems, and that he's made all efforts to remediate such problems so as to preclude future neglect of client matters. By staying healthy and taking care of ourselves, we are better able to take care of others, better able to take care of our clients. It's like the airline flight attendant who says, if the oxygen mask comes down, put yours on first before you try to take care of anybody else. It's no secret that diligence is in the recipe for success of some of the greatest people that we have ever known. Helen Keller suffered an illness which left her blind and deaf when she was 19 months old. Her childhood was incredibly difficult, but when she was 6, she began studying with Annie Sullivan, a recent graduate of the Perkins Institute for the Blind. When she was 10, she began speech classes at the School for the Deaf in Boston. Helen Keller was fairly diligent. She worked for 25 years to learn to speak so she could be understood by other people. Her diligence and accomplishments got the attention of some people who had the resources to help. Some of her best friends were Mark Twain and Alexander Graham Bell. Helen graduated from Radcliffe cum laude at the age of 24. She became a worldwide traveler and speaker, a champion of people with disabilities. She was a co-founder in 1920 of the ACLU. Helen Keller was a recipient of the Presidential Medal of Freedom. She was awarded honorary doctoral degrees from Harvard, Temple, and the University of Glasgow. She is a living example of what diligence can do, no matter what our restrictions or disabilities are. If we are diligent enough, we can truly do great things. Her diligence gave her credibility. People listened when she spoke. She had ethos. The third particle in the credibility atom is competence. A lawyer is required to provide competent representation to a client. Competence requires legal knowledge, skill, preparation, and hard work. If we believe our work is worth doing, we should get good at it and see where it takes us. Competency is a huge part of credibility. We could never consider someone credible if we didn't believe they were competent, if we didn't believe they knew what they were talking about. The consensus is that professional competence is based on a good educational background, individual commitment to continuous development and improvement, diligence, experience, and a work environment that encourages growth and development. All professionals must strive to have an honest understanding of their ability. Mistakes will be made, but they can be seen as an opportunity to learn and improve. A professional with ethos will not hide or conceal mistakes. She'll acknowledge them and seek to correct them as quickly as possible. Some lawyers who work for firms tell me they're afraid to disclose mistakes. If this fear is based on an accurate perception of the firm's philosophy, the firm should reevaluate its philosophy. A cover-up is usually worse than the original mistake. It's also inconsistent with our professional obligations. We must not only acknowledge our mistakes, we must do our best to repair the damage we've done. ABA Standard 9.32 lists timely good faith efforts to make restitution or to rectify the consequences of misconduct as a mitigating factor in all attorney discipline cases. A Colorado case which applies this principle, In re Fisher, is downloadable from the link on the page below the video you're now watching. It's well worth reading and should be considered a part of the film. But it's not just a matter of rules. Part of ethos is making reparation for the mistakes we all will make, which hurt others. Striving for ethos does not mean we will not make mistakes, but ethos dictates that when we do, we strive for reparation and healing. This restoration is a footprint of ethos. If credibility and its components are the nucleus of ethos, character is the boson which provides its mass and gravity. The particle we split out and identify here is not synonymous with morality. It goes much further. It is the building block of wisdom, judgment, and power. It is the inward motivation to do what is instinctively right, whatever the cost. It enables us to see the wise decision in every situation and provides the courage to choose that route. Theodore Roosevelt said that character, in the long run, is the decisive factor in the life of an individual and in the life of a nation. But what does character have to do with the practice of law? We're not trying to be monks or missionaries. Aristotle thought character was essential to the art of persuasion, and much of what we do involves persuasion in one form or another. Aristotle said, "Persuasion is achieved by the speaker's personal character. We believe good men more fully and more readily than others." The necessity of effective persuasion extends beyond judges and juries to clients, other lawyers, legislators, and our public image. Real-life examples of character are all around us. Malala shared the Nobel Peace Prize. She was only 15 when she was shot by the Taliban. As a young woman, she's gone on to become a great speaker and a great advocate of education and nonviolent discussion of serious issues around the world. She appeared on The Daily Show with Jon Stewart in October of 2013. She's one of the few guests that totally set Jon Stewart back on his heels. She was asked during the show what she would do if she was attacked again by a Taliban gunman. She said, "I would tell him how important education is, and I would want education for your children as well. That's what I want to tell you. Now do whatever you want." She doesn't wish for revenge, even though the Taliban has threatened her life. She said, "If you hit a Talib, then there would be no difference between you and the Talib. You must not treat others with cruelty. You must fight others through peace.
But through peace and through dialogue and through education."
Pick a room, any room. This is the toughest guy in the room. This is an Army Ranger in Afghanistan. This is what character looks like. This is the face of character. Character is strong. Character is powerful. Character is brave. But character is also extremely kind and sympathetic. This Army Ranger rescued this little puppy from a very violent combat zone. This is the face of character. This is what character looks like. These three are real-life examples of what Ethos is made of and what it can do. But footprints of Ethos can also be found in literature. Harper Lee's America was one in which family was at the summit of human relations. In small towns and big cities alike, families sat down together around the dinner table every evening. They shared their joys and their sorrows, knowing that those around the table cared and wanted to hear about both. It was around such a table that Atticus taught his son the responsibilities of owning and using a gun. He told him he must never shoot a mockingbird. To kill a mockingbird was a sin. Mockingbirds, he said, don't get in the cornfields or barns and eat our food. They don't hunt or harm other animals. They just sit around all day singing and making beautiful music for us to hear and enjoy. This was actually a time-honored tradition in the South, passed down for generations. It reflects the reality that there is innocence in the world. And when we find it, we must treasure and protect it. If we harm innocence, we do so at our peril. The protagonists of literature reflect those human virtues we instinctively admire and respect. For lawyers, Atticus Finch leaves a footprint which is deep and enduring. Atticus, because of his intelligence, wisdom, and character, was respected by everyone in the town. The character which earned him the respect of a town also caused them to turn against him when he agreed to defend Tom Robinson. Ethos is not controlled by situations. It controls them. It does not seek popularity or acceptance. Atticus practiced the same virtues of sympathy and understanding that he taught his children. He never held a grudge against the people of Macomb for their blind prejudice against Tom. Likewise, he understood their inability to accept his defending Tom. He recognized that people have both good and bad in them. He chose to admire the good while understanding and forgiving the bad. One of the great statements Atticus made during the trial, in a place and time where it was not politically correct to say, was, "In our courts, all men are created equal." A trial can be an emotional, polarizing event. Atticus did not allow himself to become involved in the fear, hate, or anger that is often generated by a difficult trial. Atticus shows us the eye of the hurricane and the parable of turning the other cheek when the young victim's father spits in his face. Make no mistake, Atticus was not afraid, and he could have started and ended the fight in seconds. But he took the high road, the path of ethos. Most humans have an instinctive feel for what is right. Mario Como said, "Every time I've done something that didn't feel right, it's ended up not being right." Character is the force that enables us to follow that instinct, even to the exclusion of fear, hate, greed, or self-interest. So, if ethos is worthwhile, if it's meaningful, if it gives mass and gravity to human relations, if it makes us better lawyers and better people, how do we get it? Aristotle explained that you learn by doing, that you become by being. The quest for ethos is a matter of choice, and it is a solo flight, and you will never make a perfect landing. Ben Franklin devised a scientific, systematic plan for acquiring what he called, quote, virtues, close quote. At the end of his study, he concluded, quote, "I never arrived at the perfection I had been so ambitious of obtaining, but fell far short of it. Yet I was, by the endeavor, a better and happier man than I otherwise should have been if I had not attempted it." He noted, tongue-in-cheek, that a benevolent man should allow a few faults in himself to keep his friends in countenance. The scientist at the Large Hadron Collider didn't really see the Higgs boson. In the light-speed particle collision, it disintegrates into other particles in a fraction of a second. What they saw was something like its footprint. Ethos, like the boson, can't be seen. It's too powerful and moves too quickly. We see its footprint and know it was there. The footprints of ethos can be seen in the lives of some very successful and famous people. John Marshall was the fourth Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, serving from 1801 until his death in 1835. During the Revolutionary War, he was an officer in the Continental Army. He fought in some major battles, including Germantown, where he was wounded while leading a charge. He was with Washington at Valley Forge. After the war, he studied law and was admitted to the Virginia bar. He held several political posts and served as a magistrate judge in Richmond. As a magistrate, he was described as a fair and modest man who communicated clearly and based his decisions on the common good. In 1798, he was appointed as one of 3 envoys on a diplomatic mission to France. When they arrived, the French officials refused to meet until they were paid bribes. Marshall refused to pay and returned home, and the famous slogan, "Millions for defense, but not a penny for tribute," was attributed to him. On the court, he wrote more than 500 opinions. He is considered by many legal scholars as the most influential Chief Justice in the entire history of the court. Chief Justice Marshall brought the court together as no one before or since. In 34 years, he only wrote one dissenting opinion. His personality was said to possess a wonderful persuasive force. He had what was described as a strong, sweet nature. Historians agree that his sincerity and presence commanded attention. He had charm, humor, a quick intelligence, and the ability to bring men together. His personal ethos allowed him to run a congenial court with little or no bickering at a critical time in American history. And he had a life beyond the law. He was a frequent visitor to Richmond's theaters, and he read Jane Austen novels. He played chess and horseshoes with the same passion and diligence that penned timeless Supreme Court opinions. He was a member of the Richmond Barbecue Club and is said to have enjoyed its famous punch laced with brandy and rum on frequent occasions. In his last hours, he told his friends he wanted only a simple marker. Oral Kelly was the first woman judge on a Colorado appellate court, appointed by Governor Vanderhoof in 1974. Prior to this appointment, she had a successful career in private practice and in the Attorney General's office. She was greatly respected on the Court of Appeals and became its chief judge in 1988. She had the reputation of being an extraordinary writer. Her opinions were often used as training for the court's law clerks. Despite her accomplishments, she was described as innately humble. Diane Smith, a shareholder in Berg Simpson, described her as a soft-spoken and reserved woman, never one to brag about all the things she had done. One of her favorite sayings was, "Do not take thyself too seriously." Judge Kelly lived well. She read voraciously and taught herself to knit and play the guitar. She loved dogs. She tended a rose garden and traveled to the Pawnee grasslands to watch the raptors. She participated in the annual Audubon Society bird count. Judge Kelly played the piano in spite of arthritis. She attended opera and held season tickets to the CU Shakespeare Festival. She loved baseball. She had a poster of Dante Bichette in her garage. Judge Kelly was married to one man, Tom Kelly, who was also a very successful lawyer, for 56 years. He died in April of 2000. Judge Kelly passed away 7 months later. In 1925, at the age of 20, Leon Jaworski became the youngest person ever admitted to the Texas bar. A graduate of Baylor Law School, he jumped right in, defending bootleggers during Prohibition. In 1931, he joined a law firm in Houston that would later become Fulbright and Jaworski, one of the largest law firms in the United States. Reflecting Leon's personal values, his firm was the first in Houston to hire black and Jewish staff. Serving in the Army JAG during the war, he became one of the first prosecutors of war crimes in Europe when the war ended. He then returned to Houston and became a very successful business and commercial lawyer. He represented large banks and corporate clients. Lyndon Johnson became a personal friend and client. In the midst of this success, in 1962, Attorney General Robert Kennedy appointed him special prosecutor in a contempt case against Mississippi's governor, Ross Barnett. Governor Barnett had refused to follow a federal court order to admit the first black student to the University of Mississippi. This was a very controversial prosecution in the South. Jaworski was criticized and ostracized by many influential Southerners. He lost some of his most lucrative and important clients as a result of taking on this case. True to his character, he did it anyway, because it was the right thing to do. In June 1972, persons loyal to President Nixon broke into the Democratic National Committee offices, seeking to gain an advantage in the upcoming election. The burglary was discovered, and the investigation flooded the media. A congressional committee was established to assist the investigation. By that time, President Nixon had been reelected and was well into his second term. The committee discovered the existence of secret White House recordings, which were believed to show knowledge of the burglary on the part of the president. A battle for possession of the tapes began between the president and Congress. A special prosecutor was appointed to investigate the administration's role in the break-in or its cover-up. But the prosecutor was fired because he refused to back away from the tapes. The administration appointed Leon as his replacement. Many observers saw Jaworski as a Nixon crony who would whitewash the investigation, but they didn't know Leon. He sought the White House tapes as tenaciously as Archibald Cox had, and when the president refused to turn them over, he issued a subpoena for them in the spring of 1974. The Supreme Court ordered the president to comply with the subpoena. The tapes were finally produced and proved the president was involved in the cover-up of the break-in. After the president resigned, Jaworski's staff and public opinion pushed him to indict the former president for obstruction of justice. Leon refused, concluding that the president could never get a fair trial. He also refused to challenge President Ford's pardon of Mr. Nixon, concluding that it was constitutional and in the best interests of the country. History has proven his judgment correct. It was best to close the book on this dark chapter of American history and move forward. Following the footsteps of Chief Justice Marshall, Leon Jaworski showed character, diligence, and persuasiveness at the highest levels of government and in critical stages of American history, law, and politics. Like the great Chief Justice and Judge Kelly, he loved and enjoyed life. He was a trustee of the M.D. Anderson Foundation and served on the boards of the Texas Medical Center and the Baylor College of Medicine. He loved spending time on his Circle J Ranch in the Texas Hill Country near Austin. He enjoyed his family, his horses, and entertaining friends. He died on the ranch in 1982. He was 77. In Justice Marshall, Judge Kelly, and Leon Jaworski, we can see what happens when all the parts of Ethos come together. A career well done, a life well lived. In the final analysis, Ethos gives us much more than the ability to successfully connect with other people. It connects us to the universe and allows us to find our place there.